I think personally, I think they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
A man who she abandoned for months to the media and now presents her mother, Doria, speaking for the first time, telling outright lies about her ex-husband. I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the families.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
Stop everything, because this is not gossip, this is a royal time bomb. Just when the world thought the Sussex saga had finally cooled down, Tom Bower has allegedly detonated the most dangerous revelation yet. A secret clause, hidden in plain sight, buried deep inside legal paperwork. And according to insiders, Prince Harry had absolutely no idea what he was agreeing to when he signed. This isn't about titles. This isn't about Netflix deals. This is about control, about leverage, about a clause so quietly inserted, so expertly worded, that royal sources are calling it a legal ambush. The kind of clause that doesn't just protect assets, it dictates futures. And the most chilling part? It allegedly benefits Meghan Markle in ways Harry never saw coming. Palace insiders are reportedly stunned. Legal analysts are scrambling. And royal watchers are asking the same terrifying question. How could a prince sign something this powerful without fully understanding it? According to leaks tied to Bower, this clause only activates under specific conditions. And if triggered, it could flip the entire Sussex narrative upside down. Social media is already in meltdown. Fans are divided. Critics are circling. And behind closed doors, sources say panic has set in because if this clause is real, and if Harry truly didn't know, then this isn't just another royal scandal. It's the most devastating legal twist in modern royal history. And once you hear what this clause allegedly does, there's no unhearing it. The moment Tom Bower opened his mouth, everything changed. This wasn't a tease. It wasn't a vague hint dropped for attention. According to multiple publishing insiders, what Bower allegedly leaked sent shockwaves through royal legal circles because it reframed the entire Sussex story from emotional fallout to calculated paperwork. At the center of it all sits Meghan Markle, and a clause so quietly embedded that even seasoned royal advisors are reportedly asking how it slipped through. The most disturbing part, Prince Harry is said to have signed it without fully understanding what it would one day control. To understand how something this explosive could happen, you have to go back to the chaos surrounding Megxit. That period wasn't just emotionally charged, it was legally frantic. Multiple jurisdictions, multiple advisors, media contracts forming in real time, palace protocols colliding with Hollywood strategy. Sources claim the Sussex legal framework was assembled under pressure, with documents flying back and forth across continents, revised repeatedly, sometimes hours before deadlines. In that environment, insiders say, clauses weren't always explained line by line. They were summarized, framed, presented as standard protections. And that's where the trap may have been set. According to those familiar with Bower's alleged findings, the clause in question wasn't labeled dramatically. No red flags, no bold warnings. It appeared as a secondary provision tied to future separation contingencies, something Harry reportedly believed was irrelevant unless a hypothetical divorce ever occurred. But insiders insist this clause wasn't passive. It was active. Dormant, yes, but designed to activate the moment certain conditions were met. Conditions that Harry allegedly never imagined would apply to him. What makes this even more unsettling is the reported imbalance of legal representation. While both parties had counsel, sources claim Meghan's team was far more entrenched in American-style entertainment contracts, where future-proofing and control clauses are aggressive by design. Harry, by contrast, was accustomed to royal agreements built on trust, precedent, and institutional guardrails. That mismatch, insiders say, created a perfect storm. One side negotiated like a studio executive, the other like a prince, raised to believe the system would protect him. Bower's leak allegedly points to language that governs postmarital narratives, financial flows, and decision-making authority in ways that extend far beyond a typical divorce framework. This wasn't just about splitting assets. It was about defining who controls the story, who profits from future ventures, and who carries the legal risk if agreements are breached. Royal legal experts reviewing the alleged wording have described it as asymmetrical, meaning it binds one party far more tightly than the other. And here's where the story takes a darker turn. Insiders claim Harry only became aware of the clause's true scope after recent internal reviews connected to future media projects. In other words, it wasn't the marriage that triggered alarm bells, it was business. When advisors flagged limitations he didn't remember agreeing to, confusion reportedly turned into disbelief. How could a duke, with access to elite counsel, have signed something this restrictive? The answer, according to sources, lies in timing and trust. At the height of Sussex upheaval, Harry was emotionally exhausted. Family tensions, public attacks, relocation stress, new fatherhood. Insiders describe him as overwhelmed, eager to protect his wife, and desperate to secure independence quickly. That mindset, they say, made him vulnerable to summaries instead of scrutiny. He trusted that anything placed in front of him had been vetted in his best interest. If the leak is accurate, that trust may have been misplaced. The palace reaction, according to royal correspondence, has been one of quiet alarm. Not because the clause exists, royal contracts are notoriously complex, but because of what it suggests about process. If a senior royal could sign a document without fully grasping its long-term implications, what does that say about the safeguards? One former aide reportedly called it a failure of duty disguised as autonomy. Public reaction has been just as volatile. Online, fans are split between outrage and denial. Some insist Harry is responsible for what he signs, period. Others argue the power imbalance and emotional manipulation make informed consent questionable at best. Hashtags questioning the ethics of the agreement began trending within hours of Bauer's comments resurfacing. YouTube breakdowns exploded. TikTok legal analysts dissected hypothetical language line by line, speculating on how such a clause could function in practice. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp has maintained strategic silence. No direct denial, no clarification, just carefully worded statements about privacy and misinformation. To critics, that silence feels calculated. To supporters, it feels protective. But insiders insist the lack of a firm rebuttal is what's fueling speculation that Bauer's leak hit closer to home than anyone expected. What's undeniable is the shift in narrative. This is no longer framed as a love story gone wrong or a couple versus the crown. It's being reframed as a cautionary tale about contracts, control, and what happens when emotion outruns due diligence. And at the center of it stands a clause that allegedly rewrites the balance of power in ways Harry never anticipated. As legal experts continue to debate whether such a provision would even be enforceable across borders, one thing is clear. The existence of this clause, real or alleged, has already done damage. It has planted doubt. It has reframed past decisions. And it has raised a question that refuses to go away. If Harry truly didn't know what he signed, then who did? Because according to insiders close to the leak, this clause wasn't an accident. It was intentional. And if that's true, then what comes next won't just explain the past, it will determine the future. Once the leak escaped the closed circles of royal publishing, the reaction wasn't outrage, it was panic. According to insiders, phones inside legal offices connected to the Sussex orbit started ringing before the sun came up. Not because the story was false, but because too many details lined up uncomfortably well. Tom Bauer didn't just hint at a clause, he reportedly described its function. And that's where the narrative shifted from scandal to strategy. Sources familiar with the alleged wording say the clause operates like a switch, not active during marriage, not visible in day-to-day life, but triggered the moment separation becomes more than hypothetical. It allegedly governs who controls future earnings tied to joint branding, who has final say over narrative-driven projects, and who bears liability if agreements collide with prior commitments. Legal analysts say that kind of provision isn't unheard of in Hollywood, but in royal-adjacent agreements, it's radioactive. What stunned observers most was how the clause allegedly framed consent. Rather than requiring fresh approval at the time of activation, it reportedly relied on pre-signed authorization. In other words, once it woke up, it didn't ask permission. And insiders claim Prince Harry believed any future separation terms would be renegotiated when and if they were needed. The idea that something was already locked in felt impossible, until advisors started pointing to the fine print. Behind the scenes, sources say Harry's team initiated a quiet internal review after questions surfaced around upcoming projects. That's when the confusion set in. Restrictions appeared where none were expected. Obligations existed that no one remembered agreeing to. According to one insider, the mood shifted from "this must be a mistake" to "how did we miss this?" Emails were pulled, drafts were compared, and the realization landed hard. The clause had been there all along. The imbalance became clearer as experts weighed in. Several contract specialists told royal correspondents that the alleged language places disproportionate control with one party over the other's future commercial freedom. Not total control, but enough to shape outcomes, enough to influence decisions, enough to make walking away expensive in ways that aren't immediately obvious. One analyst described it as a velvet rope that tightens when you try to leave. This is where Meghan Markle re-enters the story, not as a villain or a victim, but as a strategist. Insiders emphasize that none of this proves malice, but they also insist the structure reflects a negotiating style far more common in entertainment than aristocracy. Clauses designed to anticipate worst-case scenarios. Language that protects leverage long after relationships end. To Hollywood lawyers, it's prudent. To royal traditionalists, it's unthinkable. Public reaction exploded as these interpretations spread. Supporters of Meghan argued that protecting future autonomy is smart, especially given the volatility of royal life. Critics countered that informed consent matters more than clever drafting. The question dominating social media wasn't whether the clause exists, but whether Harry truly understood it. And that distinction matters legally. If he did, the controversy fades into hard lessons. If he didn't, it opens doors no one wants opened. Inside Buckingham Palace, sources describe a mood of grim vindication. Not celebration, validation. Advisors who warned about mixing royal precedent with celebrity contracts allegedly feel proven right. One former aide said the situation underscores why the institution prefers rigid protocols over bespoke arrangements. Flexibility, they argue, creates gaps, and gaps are where power shifts unnoticed. The Sussex camp responded with restraint. Carefully calibrated statements about misinformation, privacy, and the dangers of speculation. No direct address of the clause. No categorical denial. That silence became its own accelerant. Media outlets began reaching out to legal experts rather than spokespeople. Hypotheticals were analyzed as if they were real. And the more plausible the mechanics sounded, the harder it became to dismiss the story outright. Then came the twist nobody expected. Insiders claim the clause may not only affect divorce, it may influence pre-divorce behavior. Certain decisions, if made while married, could allegedly lock in post-separation consequences automatically. That means actions taken years ago might already be shaping outcomes now. If true, it reframes the entire timeline. What looked like independent choices could have been constrained by invisible guardrails. Harry's alleged reaction, according to those close to the situation, was disbelief followed by anger, not at Meghan but at the process. He reportedly questioned how summaries were presented, what was emphasized, and what was minimized. The issue wasn't that he signed, it was what he was told the signature meant. Friends say he feels embarrassed more than betrayed. A prince raised to trust institutions discovering that autonomy comes with traps. As the debate raged, attention turned back to Bauer. Critics accused him of provocation. Supporters called him meticulous. What neither side denied was his access. When an author with his track record speaks, institutions listen, even if they don't respond. And insiders claim he isn't done, that his leak was measured, that he held back details to see how the story would land. The legal community is now split. Some argue the clause would be unenforceable across borders, especially if consent is challenged. Others warn that enforcement isn't the real threat, deterrence is. The mere existence of such language can chill decision-making, shape negotiations, and limit options without ever seeing a courtroom. That's power without publicity. As the dust settled on the initial wave, one truth became unavoidable. This wasn't about love or loyalty. It was about leverage. About how quickly roles changed when a prince entered a world where contracts speak louder than crowns. And about how a single clause, quiet, technical, overlooked, can redefine an entire narrative. According to insiders tracking the fallout, the next phase won't be fought in headlines. It will unfold in meetings, drafts, and decisions delayed. And looming over all of it is a question no one has answered yet. If this clause was designed to anticipate separation, what else was anticipated, and what else is still hidden? By the time the third wave hit, it was no longer a leak, it was a countdown. Insiders say the moment Tom Bauer realized the first revelations hadn't been crushed, He understood the silence as permission, not approval, permission. Because institutions deny loudly when something is false. They litigate quietly when something is dangerous. And what was now circulating through legal backchannels was being described as dangerous in the purest sense, capable of triggering consequences no statement could undo. Sources close to the situation claim the final layer of this clause isn't about money at all. It's about control after separation. Not custody, not titles. Narrative authority, who can speak, who must stay silent, who gets to define the past without legal pushback. Allegedly, the clause outlines a hierarchy of credibility, one voice protected, the other constrained, activated the moment the marriage is deemed irretrievable. And according to multiple legal analysts reviewing hypothetical language consistent with the leak, this kind of provision doesn't gag outright. It chills. It forces every sentence through a cost-benefit analysis that favors restraint. That's where Prince Harry reportedly felt the ground move beneath him. Friends say it wasn't the realization that he'd signed something restrictive. It was the dawning awareness that his future choices had already been priced. That speaking freely could invite penalties. That silence wasn't just emotional fatigue, it might be contractual gravity. And for someone who has built his post-royal identity on telling his truth, that realization hit hard. Behind closed doors, advisors scrambled. Not to deny the clause, sources say that ship had sailed, but to map the perimeter. What exactly triggers enforcement? What constitutes a breach? Does commentary count if it's contextual? If it's memoir? If it's therapy adjacent? The answers, according to those briefed, were unsettlingly gray. Enough ambiguity to deter boldness. Enough specificity to be enforceable. It was, as one lawyer put it, a corridor with mirrors. Everything looks like an exit until you try to walk through it. Publicly, Meghan Markle remained poised. No interviews, no counterleaks, no emotional rebuttals. Her camp reiterated a familiar refrain about misinformation and privacy, emphasizing that complex agreements are often mischaracterized. Supporters praised the discipline. Critics called it calculation. Insiders suggested something else entirely: confidence. The kind that comes from knowing the paperwork speaks for itself. As speculation intensified, attention turned to timing. Why now? Why would such a clause matter at this moment? Sources point to convergence, upcoming projects, renewed public interest, internal reviews that surfaced constraints previously dormant, and perhaps most importantly, a shift in leverage. Clauses like this matter most when relationships cool and futures diverge, when cooperation gives way to positioning. Then came the reaction that set the internet ablaze. A legal commentator with ties to cross-border contract disputes went on record, carefully, suggesting that if informed consent could be questioned, enforceability might weaken. The caveat: proving lack of understanding is notoriously difficult when signatures are present and counsel was involved. It becomes a battle of process, not intent, of meetings remembered differently, of summaries versus transcripts, of what was said versus what was signed. Inside the palace ecosystem, the mood was described as grimly analytical. No gloating, no public statements, just a quiet acknowledgement that the modern royal experiment collided with modern contract culture, and contracts don't care about fairy tales. A former aide remarked that this is precisely why institutions prefer blunt rigidity over bespoke freedom. Custom deals create shadows. Shadows hide leverage. Online, the narrative fractured again. Some accused Harry of naivety. Others saw him as a cautionary figure caught between worlds. Many asked a sharper question: if this clause exists, how many others like it are buried in celebrity marriages we never see? The discourse widened beyond royalty into a broader reckoning about power dynamics, legal literacy, and the price of speed when lives are being restructured in public. Then, the most unsettling rumor surfaced. Insiders whispered that an annotated draft exists, one that charts the evolution of the clause across versions. Not proof of wrongdoing, proof of intention, how language narrowed, how contingencies expanded, how safeguards migrated. If released, experts say it wouldn't prove deception. It would prove design, and design in law is everything. Harry's next moves, sources say, are cautious. Fewer off-the-cuff remarks, more scripted appearances. Decisions delayed until advisors clear them. The restraint has been misread as fatigue, but insiders insist it's calculation. Every word weighed, every appearance vetted. The clause, if real, has already done its job by shaping behavior without ever being enforced. As the dust settles, one truth cuts through the noise. This isn't about villains or victims. It's about asymmetry, about what happens when two people enter an agreement with different assumptions about how power is preserved. One trusted tradition, the other trusted text, and text tends to win. The final question isn't whether the clause will ever be litigated, it's whether it needs to be, because the most effective leverage never reaches a courtroom. It lives in the pause before a sentence is spoken, in the project that doesn't move forward, in the story that remains untold. And as insiders watch the calendar inch forward, they agree on one thing. If the annotated draft drops, it won't just clarify the past. It will lock the future into place. The only uncertainty left is who decides when that happens, and who, by then, is still free to speak. If you're still watching right now, it's because you understand something most people don't yet. This story is not finished, it's loading. What you just heard isn't recycled tabloid noise. It's the kind of information that changes how power works once the public catches up. And when the next document surfaces, when the next confirmation drops, there will be two kinds of people online. The ones scrambling to understand it, and the ones who were already here. Don't put yourself in the first group. Hit like if you believe there's more buried in this story than we've been allowed to see. Comment what part made you stop and rethink everything, because the comments are where patterns start forming, and trust me, people are watching those reactions closely. And subscribe right now, because missing the next update won't just mean missing a video, it means missing the moment the narrative finally snaps into focus. Turn on notifications. Not later, not tomorrow. Because when the next leak lands, it won't come with a warning, and it won't stay quiet for long. This isn't just about Harry. It's not just about Meghan. It's about what happens when contracts outlive relationships, when silence becomes enforced, and when the truth costs more than most people are willing to pay. Stay here, stay ready, because the next reveal won't ask for your attention, it will demand it.